Hi, my name is Paula and I'm a new mom. Welcome to We've Probably Been There, a podcast by First Moms Club about how we really dealt and truly felt about everything motherhood. No BS, no judgment, and no advice, from us at least. Welcome to the club. This is the story of how birthing a child is so different and unique for every one of us. It's certainly a trip, but no holiday. So as you know, I have two girls, 3 and 16 months, and I can't say that my birthing stories were extremely out of the ordinary. What I can say was I don't think I expected the contractions to be so painful. And I can't say that I expected the epidural to be so painful. Anyway, so just to recap really quickly, my water broke at home for Maya. I got to the hospital, contractions. I needed the Pitocin to get, the birthing moving a little quicker and, push for about maybe 2 hours. And Maya came out. And then for Maddie, I was induced because she decided to stay in my belly for like 10 days longer than she should have. And so I got induced and she came out in like 30 minutes because it was my second and they're 2 years apart. So I guess down there was a little roomier. Anyway, so I'm joined today by Vanessa, mom of 2, Alex, mom of 3, and Francesca, mom of 2, to go on and share with us their birthing stories and how Labor Day went for them. So Francesca, we'll start with you. Tell us about your birthing story.
Well, so the first birthing story was with my daughter, Tessa. Her birthday is in April 2020. So for those keeping track, that is 1 month after the pandemic started. And or at least in Quebec, and I was slated to deliver at the Jewish, which was the COVID designated hospital. Anyone who had COVID was supposed to go to this hospital. And whatever, things are moving along, I'm at home, whatever, the news comes out that they're not letting any extra people into the hospital and that everyone has to deliver alone. There's not a support person, there's no testing. Too bad, so sad, you're by yourself. And, I was talking to my sister about it in that moment and I was like, guess this will be okay. How, it'll suck for Mike, who's my husband, but I'm like, I'm just gonna be lying there anyways in writhing pain. Like, does it really matter? So that was my first take on it. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is gonna be difficult, but like, I consider myself a strong person. Like, I thought I would be fine. So my water broke at home. It was like 2 a.m. And so I had been awake all day. It was like, I hadn't gone to sleep. It was like 1:32 a.m. and my water broke. My husband, we pack up, we go to the Jewish, and basically they have like a labor triage center if you haven't been there. And hello, this is my story. You call them on the way, and then like, okay, bye. I'll call you when I'm done. Like, what else am I supposed to say to him? And a bit like you, I was kind of like, I'll take the epidural if I need it. I think I can handle this. Blah blah blah. I was dropped off at like 3 a.m. and by 6 a.m. the shift change happened and they were like, do you want the epidural? And I was like, yes, please. And that's kind of a scary thing. Like someone comes at you with this needle to your back and like you have no one as like a support. And that was like the first moment where I was like, man, I really wish someone else was here.
Did you hold on to someone? Because I remember holding on to Matt's hands when they were giving me the epidural. I needed someone.
No.
You had no one?
I had no one. No. I will say that like that early person that I had was in like the one section of the hospital and then they bring you to another section. I don't know what had happened, but they were like a lot more like, not rigid, but like just business. Like we're not into like making you be warm and fuzzy or anything like that. And so they were very polite, but at the end of the day, like, they're not there to like hold your hand, right? And it's also in the start of the pandemic, they don't know what's going on either. And like staffing is thin because people are being assigned other places. And I was kind of just like left on my own for a while. And I was like, okay, but I had the epidural. I wasn't in pain and things seemed to be progressing, but slowly. And so I was just like kind of there. And the next nurse that came on was a gem. I wish I could remember her name. She was this like fresh from nursing school woman, and I want to say her name was like Janet maybe or some Cynthia. Anyways, she was like really kind, and she was like made a point to check in on me like every hour, every 2 hours. And it was nice, but it still wasn't a support person. And
Someone that you knew.
someone that you knew, right? Like, and so like this was kind of going on, and it gets to be like midday, 11 a.m. And I'm kind of like, I've stopped progressing. Like I'm stuck at 8 centimeters. And they're like, listen, you're not progressing. We have to start doing these things. And I'm so tired. Like now I'm awake like
2 days.
a day and a half pretty much. Yeah, 2 days almost. And I was like, okay, like what do we do? And they're like, we are going to give you some medicine, I guess the
Pitocin?
Pitocin, to start. And so that happened, and I still wasn't progressing. They thought I was progressing. She was like, can I just check you? You know, they always ask. I just check. Like, you don't need to ask
I'm
anymore.
an open door right now.
And so she checked. She's like, oh, I think you're ready to go. And I was like, great. And then no, I wasn't. The doctor came in and she's like, no, she's still at 8 centimeters. So then they gave me Gravol to help, which apparently like just relaxes you, and it's like supposed to help things flow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it was like an IV Gravol. And
The
like
IV Gravel with the epidural.
because the
flying.
epidural wasn't working. And I'll tell you
Oh.
why. So, and this is like why things kind of weren't progressing the way they wanted. Instead of coming out like in a straight line, she was coming out at like maybe a 45-degree
Right.
angle.
Yes.
And so she's putting pressure on your back
Yes.
where like the epidural isn't doing anything.
Yes.
It's all this back spinal
Yes.
pressure. So every 20 minutes I'm hitting like the
Right,
Gravol
right.
like
Button.
like button or whatever to get the extra dose. And this is kind of going along, and I'm like, God, my friend called me. I was honestly what I had done. I had downloaded episodes of like shows and movies.
Same.
I'm in the middle of watching The Godfather, and my friend calls me and she's like, how are things?
Godfather.
And I was like, oh, I don't know. 2 days later, she's like, how are you, Frankie? I spoke to you in the hospital. I was like, we spoke in the hospital. And then at 11 o'clock was the shift change. And the doctor came on and she's like, we're going to give you a C-section. And then she checked herself and she was like, if you're okay with your birthing plan, I'd love to have you do a C-section. I was like, my birthing plan was to do what the doctor
And to
said.
have my husband here
and
with
to have
me.
my husband here with me. And so she
Are
started
you
telling
telling
me,
me that you had a C-section by yourself in the hospital?
Yeah,
Oh, it gets
that's-
worse.
That's what I'm telling you.
We had sort of a similar
Yeah,
story.
so-
The
because
way
she
that you are
started-
talking about this, I see that you sound like you're cool with this whole thing, and I am sitting here listening to this in shock
Yeah.
because this is wild.
I
Yeah.
went through something similar, and I had someone
Wild.
with me, and
Okay.
I thought it was traumatic. So can't imagine having.
This is wild.
go
through
You were
that.
left alone while you were having contractions. Like,
Yeah. I mean, the nurse was nice. She came every so often, but I was
but
pretty much alone.
the nurse
yeah.
was holding my hand. Like they were definitely
No.
touching
COVID.
touching.
They were
I mean,
scared.
she-
I
They didn't
know. I'm just saying, like, it's just, this is a lot. This
Yeah.
is a big story.
Yeah. So, and so then the shift, I was like, listen, you're telling, and she started, after I consented to the C-section, then she started telling me like all the spiel. And I was like, listen, I'm going to stop you right here. I put my husband on FaceTime. I was like, please tell him everything you're telling me. I'm too tired. I have no idea what's going on. I'm doped up on Gravol
Yeah.
and all this other stuff. So she told him whatever. And I was supposed to deliver within 30 minutes or something, but they had a code lavender, which is like someone needed an emergency C-section. So
Yes.
my daughter, heart rate normal, things
Yes,
are okay,
yes.
whatever. And so I got bumped and I delivered at like 1:40 in the morning. So practically awake like 48 hours.
So-
I labored for like 20 to 22 hours.
I just want to, your husband gets a phone call, a FaceTime. You are high
Yeah.
as a kite.
Yeah.
And he is being told by this strange doctor in a full hazmat
Mhm.
suit, I suspect.
I'm
No,
going
she
to
was
cut
in
your
her
wife open.
She was in her scrubs with just the mask. Like she
Okay,
looked like a
she-
regular
okay.
doctor.
And she says to your husband on FaceTime, not with you,
Well, I was in the room.
things
but
are
yeah.
things are not progressing. We need to do a C-section.
Mhm.
And here are all the risks that
Yeah.
come with a C-section.
Pretty much.
Are you cool with that? And he's like, and then
And
hangs up the phone and then has no idea what happens.
Yeah.
He must have been freaking out.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they just the things that happen. It's crazy. So, and all the while it's 11 o'clock. The shift changed. So the nurse that had been with me all day
Oh,
finishes her shift, and I
God.
get a new nurse. who
Yeah.
actually was very kind and very nice, and I have no complaints about her. She filmed the whole thing for my husband.
Oh,
She was
that's
there to
nice.
hold my
That is
hand.
nice.
She like held my hair back, and she was just like a really good, amazing nurse. So like, you know, that was fine. But the operating rooms at the time for the Jewish were in like the underground, like a
Yes.
basement part of the
Yes.
Jewish. And so you don't
Oh my
get
God,
cell
you're in a
reception.
morgue on top of
You
everything.
don't get cell reception. So before I get ready, it's like 1:30 in the morning before I'm about to go in. They give me like a Nokia phone to be like, call your husband, tell him you're gonna go into
Oh my
this
God, that's
operating
so
room.
This is like
I'm
from a
not allowed
horror
to have.
movie.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Here's your Nokia.
Yeah, here's a Nokia.
Here's your burner phone to call your husband.
I'm sure he got like no caller ID. Was like, what's
Oh
going
my
on?
God.
And this is a couple hours now after you were supposed to have the surgery because they
Because
postponed
they
your
bugged me.
surgery. So he has no idea what's going on.
Well, in that 2-hour interim, I still had my phone, so we
Okay.
were still able to text and everything like this.
okay.
Were you though? Were you able to text?
I mean, I was coming down. They stopped
Okay,
giving me the
okay.
drugs because
Okay.
they were like, "We're doing the C-section.
We're
we
gonna
need
give
to
you bigger drugs.
Yeah. So I go in. I was like, listen, I'll text you when I'm done. Like, I don't know how long it's going to take. 30 minutes. I have no idea. And they do the C-section. My daughter's born.
What do you remember the C-section itself?
Yeah.
Well, you're
Okay.
awake.
You're awake for the whole thing.
No, I don't remember it.
Oh.
Because and I lived very similar. We'll get to that after, but very similar situation, and I don't really remember it. I remember my second one very well, but that whole is a black hole. Like what happened there.
I remember the C-section because, like, I mean, I remember a lot of it. Like, they put the drape, they cut you open, you're just kind of there. I hear the screams. I'm like, okay, she's okay. They like held her up for me so that I could see and everything. And then the nurse, they go clean her, they bring her back to me. And so this is all happening, right? While they're like doing the skin to skin contact
On you.
on me, like whatever on your shoulder or whatever, like I start to feel cold. And like I
Blame
start
it on-
shaking.
Yes, I had. The
And I will tell you why. It's because I had labored for so long. There was so much blood that I started to like lose blood.
Yeah.
I had to tell the nurse to take away my daughter.
Yeah.
I'm not crying. I'm just really stuffed up.
You can cry.
You can cry.
I'm not. I'm
You're
not
not
sad
surprised.
about it. I'm just really stuffed up.
not-
Anyway, so I
That's
had to tell my nurse to take away my daughter. Like I'm gonna be sick. I'm gonna be sick, and I'm telling this, and it's like
And you're shaking convulsively.
I'm shaking. I'm like
Yeah.
I have like this. And I was like I'm gonna throw up. I'm gonna throw up, and I'm just like looking around. You're like down like
Yeah,
this.
nobody's there.
Well, they're all just like
Busy.
it's the start of their shift. Like, what'd you do last weekend? This is crazy
Yeah.
COVID. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
the surgeon who's in my like abdomen is like, can someone get her a bin, please? Like, she's gonna vomit. And they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. Here you go, throw up. I was like, thanks. And all I had to throw up was like an orange snack pack because that's
Right.
all I had eaten in the entire time. Because who's gonna go get you food?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was kind of like the whole birth. So to put a cap on it, they send me to the ICU like to recover. And I look at my phone and I'm like, it's 4 a.m. And I was like, oh crap. So I text my husband. I'm like, I think I'm okay. Because he's like
Yes,
freaking out because I
yes.
said 30 minutes. It's been 3 hours.
Yes.
Can you
And
imagine?
go ahead,
I just wanted
interrupt.
to ask you because now that I think about it, the first night at the hospital, like I had to get up all the time to feed her and stuff.
Mhm.
You had a C-section.
That was my next question.
How could you like? Was the nurse bringing you Tessa to feed you? Like, did you have to
You
get
guys
up?
are
Like,
hilarious.
like how did that, what did you do the first night at the hospital by yourself?
So like from whatever, the 1:32 in the morning till 6, 7 a.m.
When you were out of the ICU.
When I was out of the ICU, she was in the nursery, and so she was taken care of there. 7 o'clock, they brought her in the
yeah, the box,
rolly box,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm going to say this to the people in charge of hospitals: lower the rolly box, okay?
Yes.
The bed goes like 2
Yes.
meters off the ground. The rolly box is 3 meters off the
Yes.
ground. How do you pick up your baby? Hospitals tell me. I don't
And if
know.
you've had a C-section, just this movement is very
Yes.
like this.
Oh,
like,
I
this
was-
stretch is.
I was
Yes.
pretty much I was
Bedridden.
walking within like 2 hours.
You were.
I
Well,
was.
first of all, they do encourage you when you have a C-section to move.
Yes.
I know, but it
must have
walking
been
painful.
Walking within 2 hours.
It's
It was
awful.
pretty I mean, by 9 in the morning, I was like getting up, moving her around.
What a
I had to pick her
nightmare.
up to feed her. Like, so I was standing because I couldn't physically get in. So
You
stand
are
up
made
together.
of much tougher material stuff than I am.
that was the morning. And so then I kind of was trying to feed her. And like, we talked about feeding and all that stuff. And I thought I was doing it okay. She seemed fine. And my biggest goal in life that entire day was like going to the bathroom so I could get out of that hospital.
And how long after?
Same.
Sorry, how long after did you get out?
I'm pretty sure I think I left that night.
Wow. So
I don't think I
were really
stayed
in and
I
out.
think in COVID they didn't want you.
They
to
didn't
stay.
want you
No,
there.
they didn't want you
I
there.
was trying to hit those like check marks so I could get out as long as possible. It might have been the next day now that I think about it. She was born the 15th in the morning and I was home the 16th.
There's no
so
way
it
they
was
kept
the
you in the
next day.
ICU that
No, no,
morning
no.
and then sent you home that night.
No. Yeah. So it was
Yeah.
the next day. And they were like, we'll keep you one more day. And I was like, please no. Like, I need to get out of here. And I thought I could get out at noon. And they're like, we're just going to keep you till 6. And I was like, that's fine. I need to get out. I can't
I can't sleep
I
here.
can't. What sleep? I can't not sleep another night in the hospital
But-
because I was alone.
And also the second night is,
The worst.
The worst.
Yeah.
But also your husband at that point had not met his daughter.
Correct. They were like, what's the name?
But also,
And
You're
I
like,
was
I don't know. I'll have to
I
talk
was
to my
like, I'm
husband.
pretty sure. Like because I mean, for me, I had like a lot of names floating around for my daughter, and in the end, we kind of like, you get to the 8th month, you're like, I think it's going to be this, which was the name that we landed on. But I threw in a curveball at the 11th hour. I was like, what about this name? And we were kind of like, and I was like, I can't start using this name. Like, no, I have to stick with the name we picked, which was Tessa, which is what we did. But I wasn't going to confirm that until my husband met my
course.
baby. So,
So wait,
yeah,
can I ask?
Of course.
You walk out of the hospital. You're
they
in
let. Okay, this is the dumbest
She
part of the
rolls
whole
out of
thing.
the hospital.
Yeah.
They let him come up.
No.
I'm not shitting you. They let him come up to the room after all of that, because how you're not supposed to lift the effing chair.
yes,
You have to have the car seat.
Yes, you have to leave with the car
You
seat.
have to
That's
leave with the
true.
car
Put the
seat.
child in the car seat, but you're not meant to lift the car seat.
So
So riddle
he
me that.
was in the end able to come into the
So
hospital.
he
That
comes
must
up the elevator and he sees you and the baby and he
And it's COVID. They're like, let's bundle her up and get her out of here. So we did that.
I can't
And
even
then,
imagine that.
and so then we went home.
It's interesting to me that you were so keen on getting out of the
Oh my
hospital.
gosh.
And I understand that.
Mhm.
Like, for all the obvious reasons and everything you've gone over, and just it's like you're
Mhm.
on your own and it's COVID and you just like, get me out of here so I can be
It wasn't
supported.
because of COVID. It was not at all because of COVID that I wanted to leave. I wanted to leave so someone else could watch my daughter so I could sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah, but- and then I remember like in
Mhm.
having the C-section, and they kept us in the hospital like until day 4, I think. I think we left maybe on the
Really?
5th day.
But you had an emergency C-section. So, why don't you start from the beginning?
Wait, hold on. So, but just on this, and I remember. So this was with my first daughter. They didn't keep us quite as long for the second, but for the first they did. And I remember thinking, like, really, we have to leave now? Like
Mm.
you and
I hear you.
I learned so much, and I got so much support from being in that hospital
Mhm.
for those days that I can't. You were just kind of thrown into the thrown out into the wild,
Mhm.
and with such difficult circumstances, it being
Mhm.
COVID and your new mother. I just think to myself, like, oh my god.
No, it was like, so at the end of the day, it was fine. Like, it was okay. The hardest part for me was like the lack of sleep.
Yeah.
And like, just that little, so I had my son via C-section as well, a planned C-section,
Yes.
because
And
he
that's totally different, isn't it?
totally different.
Yeah.
He turned breech, and so I had planned the C-section, and then they're like, "Oh, he's not breech anymore," and I was like, "I'm already here, guys."
Did
Like,
you
let's
want to do a V? Did you consider a VBAC?
I did.
Okay.
I did consider it, and I was pretty much like going to do it until he went breech, and then I was like, I'm not gonna like live on the fence. And he went breech at like 35, 36 weeks,
Right.
so you have to schedule it.
Yes.
And then finally, when I get there, they do the ultrasound. They're like, "He changed again," and I was like, "Well, I'm here, so
Yeah.
let's get this.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Let's
alright.
wrap this up." And it was totally different. It was very like clinical. The nurse did hold me this time to like help me with my epidural, and
And your husband was there.
my husband was
Yeah,
there.
which makes a big difference.
I sent him out to the sushi shop. I said, "Bring back sushi." I'm like, "We're doing this. Like,
Yeah, we're doing
Yeah.
it right.
yeah, we're doing it right."
Yeah.
And so that was 2 nights, and it was fine. And we came home together, and that was
Wow.
it was kind of more
So different.
traditional. Yeah.
Well, tip of the hat to you for that.
Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is my birthing story, which is one of the crazier ones I know about. But
Yep.
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's the craziest I know.
But so you had an unplanned C-section as well.
So I also had an unplanned
With your
C-section. So
first?
with my 1st,
Mhm.
we have another fellow podcaster here, Dom, who gave birth, I think, I want to say maybe 6 months to 8 months before I did.
Mhm.
And she was sharing with me her birth story, maybe a month or two before I was to give birth. And she said to me something that, for reasons I can't explain, really stuck with me. She
Huh.
said, when I gave birth, she, I think, also was at the Jewish. She said that she'd gone to the Jewish because she was feeling contractions, and they sent her home
Mhm.
because she wasn't far
Along enough.
She,
How far?
she wasn't far enough. She wasn't far along enough. And I don't know if she mentioned it in passing as like part of her birth story, and for some reason that really stuck with me. And I thought, well, that's awful. Like when I'm going, no one's gonna send me home. Like I don't want to have to go and
I'm
come
going to
back.
stay home as long as possible.
And I'm so when I'm going, like it'll be to give birth. And so I started to feel contractions in the middle of the night. And I remember thinking like, will I know when it's contractions? And then when I felt one, I was like, oh yeah, that's it. You do know.
You know.
And so I went on for the whole day feeling contractions. They started to be closer together, and we ate a meal, and I had my hospital bag ready. And then, so now we're like 24 hours into my first contractions, and then I can only describe this as being like a very animal
Instinct?
My whole body was very animal like. Like I'd have strong contractions, and I'd literally like squat and yell in my apartment.
Yeah,
and I would
baby.
just like I felt really like
Animalistic.
animalistic. And then they'd get closer together, and I would yell, and the pain was unbearable. And at one point, it's about like 3:00 in the morning, because like I think maybe I should call the hospital. They're getting close together, and you know how there was this thing where you were supposed to time them, and you were supposed to only come when like you were in some sort of timing window.
Yes.
You have to
Who
be
remembers
within
that?
5
Yes.
minutes.
We were
Yeah.
doing the contractions, and Chris was like, I don't know if you're in the window, and I was like, so let's wait. And in the meantime, like I'm having intense contractions. So then he calls the nurse, and he said, my wife has been having contractions for about 24 hours, and now they seem to be getting really intense and really close together, but like he would calculate them to the second. He's like, but we're not there yet. And then she hears me yell on the phone, and she says, think maybe you should come in. So I gave birth at St. Mary's.
Me too.
And he brings me in, and she says, you're about 7.5, 8 centimeters dilated. So she said,
Holy
she said, you've gone very far, like
Yes.
on
Too
your
far.
own."
Yeah.
On your own.
That's a no
She said-
epidural situation,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So she said, so I was like, she's like, this is going to happen like very
Imminently,
quickly,
yeah.
like very quickly now. And right away, like the first thing she said, you might still be like, you're in a closed window for epidural. Do you want it? I was like, yeah, I think I've done like enough now. I'm prepared to like, just give me, give it to me. So she gave me the epidural. And the moment that I took, like soon after I took that, obviously I didn't feel pain any longer. But then the whole process,
Stop.
it stopped. It stopped. Everything stopped progressing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was in the hospital for 24 hours, and they kept checking on me, and it was just like small incremental gains, like but not really much movement. And I'd been there by then like more than 24 hours, and they were like, okay, well, we're gonna give you Pitocin, and that should accelerate things and sort of get you moving again. And the minute they gave me that, like very quickly after that, it became apparent that my daughter's heart rate was decelerating when they gave me the drugs. And they kept monitoring, and then at some point there was a rush of like, I think there were 2 doctors and I want to say like 4 nurses, but they kind of all rush into the hospital and they say, we have to do a C-section now. And they don't really ask for like, are you like, are we doing this? They're like, we have to do this because she's not reacting well to the hormones that we're pumping. And so Chris is like, we're doing this. Okay. I was like, sure. I mean, whatever we've got to do, right? So that all happens very, very quickly. And I don't really remember the operation because I think I felt very stressed. I was all sort of mentally primed, and I'd gotten so far into this process, and I was like, but I've done all this work. Won't I get the satisfaction now of doing the natural birth? And I don't know, I feel a little bit like I got robbed because I went through this and then I still have to go through the operation.
Mhm.
And so the one thing I remember though is that I was so shaky kind of after that they didn't put her on me for skin to skin.
Mm.
I remember like convulsing almost.
Mhm.
I remember this is as I said, the only thing I remember, Chris was near me and they said, "You take your shirt off, she's gonna go on you."
Mhm.
So they put her on him. And he had never held a baby and he was not at all comfortable with babies before. So he was like, he tells me, he was like, well, I didn't expect to have to hold her so quickly and to hold like such a newborn. You've never experienced a feeling like that before, you know? And then after that, I really truly don't remember what happened for the next maybe 6 hours. I assume I was sleeping. I think Chris said like you were sleeping. And then they brought her to me and that's where I sort of like kind of regained memory of
Mhm.
what happened. But it took me a bit longer than it did you to start walking again. And of course, they're looking for that like check of you go to the bathroom,
Mhm.
that of course. And I didn't have any issues breastfeeding, so they kept me. I think just because they could feel that my body had been fatigued from the labor
Mhm.
and from also the C-section, and I guess they wanted to make sure that the recovery was going to plan. But they were never told me why they kept me so long. They didn't flag any kind of issues or anything like that. But I do remember leaving and being like, "Oh well, we were in the comfort of the hospital now and the staff, and now we're going out into the real world. Like, can we really do this?" And it was a totally different experience with my second. You know, you plan it and you know when you're going in, and I remember everything, and I felt very sort of there. But it, I think it was somewhat traumatic to have to go through live the rush of the doctors who were like, "We have to do this now." And you don't have a choice. And it wasn't, no one had said in the hours preceding, like I'd been there 24 hours, like, you know, it would have been nice to hear if this doesn't progress and there are issues, you may be
Like
headed for a
warnings.
C-section, you know, the C-section word was not uttered until the staff came like running into the hospital room. So I think I was just caught kind of unawares.
I feel like it's a bit like they don't say it because some people will be like, they'll freak out the other way. Like, I couldn't possibly, I don't want the surgery. And then they'll have like an adverse reaction.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit because, like, I don't know if you guys did these. I mentioned them yesterday. The CLSC courses.
I did them. Yeah.
Yeah. Nowhere in there do they talk about like maybe you might need a C-section or
Yes.
like what to do in those circumstances. They assume that everything's going to go to plan and that you're always going to have a regular vaginal birth and you're going to breastfeed right away and everything's going to go smoothly. And we're just here to tell you all that information. And if you can't do it that way, well,
I think
ooh,
likewise, what they're trying to prevent there, I saw that more as they don't want to promote C-sections for the women who don't want to go through natural birth, so they don't like readily offer it as too quickly. They always favor natural birth because there are a lot of benefits to the child and for the mother to do it that way. But so they don't dangle that too quickly. It's like a very much of a last resort thing. And I think that's why it's not.
They even,
Yeah.
sorry to cut you off, but they even, when I went in with my son, when I told you he had switched directions, they were like, "Oh, well, are you sure you still want to do this? You can just wait and have a regular birth."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Of
like,
course.
it's same. I don't know if the same thing happened with your second or like
No,
with you.
they actually, with my second, it was interesting because they measured the scar to know whether I was a candidate for VBAC.
Mm.
And they told me, yes, you are a candidate for VBAC. So I was like, okay, then I would like the time to consider that. As I was considering and I was leaning towards having a vaginal birth, with further ultrasounds, they became aware that my daughter was really little. Like they thought that she would measure like 3-4 pounds at birth.
Oh, wow.
They were like, she's not really growing the way that we think she should. Maybe there's a problem with the placenta. And I was very, very, very nervous about that. And I, did everything I could to like stop working and, double my portions and just relax and all that. And so they said, she is so little that we don't think that it would be wise to go through a vaginal birth.
Really? Okay.
You should have a C-section and you should have it earlier because if there's anything wrong with your placenta and it's not doing its job, then you'd be better off feeding her out of the womb than
Mm-hmm.
in. And of course, she was born, Alice, my second. And the first thing I asked Chris, because I was obsessed with her weight, they put her on the scale and I said, "What's the weight?" That's the only thing I said, "What's the weight?" And then Chris said, "You've got a 6-pounder." And he just
Like a
felt-
turkey.
Yeah. And I just felt like, oh, we're going to be okay. Because they said you might not be able to breastfeed her. You might have to go through gavage. And, they really had primed me for like a minuscule child.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born a minuscule child. And my mom said, gavage is not fun. It's difficult. Like, it's quite heartbreaking to have to do that with a newborn. And I was like mentally prepared for that. So when I had the satisfaction of knowing that she was like a regular baby weight, I mean, she wasn't big, but I'm not a big person, and my other child was about the same weight. I knew we were going to be okay, but it was just I wasn't given the option really of having a VBAC ultimately.
So how many weeks were you when you gave birth to Alice?
36 and a little bit. Yeah, it might have been a 7-pounder if I'd given her time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It goes to show you the ultrasounds, like, they're not perfect. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they have an idea, but people put a lot of stock into, like, oh, this is exactly what it's going to be. And then they're like, oh, no,
Yeah.
just kidding. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually kind of why I stuck also with the C-section for my son. My daughter was born 8.5 pounds roughly, and he was bigger. I was like, if she got stuck, there's no way he's making it out.
Yeah.
Just forget about it. So, anyways, what about you? What were your experiences?
I was induced all 3 times because I have diabetes in pregnancy. It's a little bit weird.
A friend of
but-
mine had that. She said it was the worst.
It's not gestational diabetes. I'm actually diabetic in pregnancy.
Ooh,
It's
okay.
like very weird and bizarre, and I'm on insulin from like the day I get pregnant. Anyways, that's a very specific piece of it, but the regulations are that you have to be induced early because they're worried about a big baby. By the way, I never had a big baby, but I still was induced early. So the first one I was induced, I want to say 38 weeks. Second was 37 weeks, and the third was 36 weeks because it's very technical, but they were worried that my placenta wasn't working anymore because my blood sugar was actually regulating, and that normally as your placenta gets bigger, it produces a hormone that I'm going to use the word negates insulin in your body. So the insulin in your body stops working as well. So therefore your blood sugar should be getting worse, not better. So it was
that
like
was a weird thing for
it was
them.
like weird. Yeah. So my doctor was just like, I don't really feel comfortable with this anymore. And I was like, dude, you're the professional. If you don't feel comfortable, let's just do it.
I mean,
Like,
yeah, I mean,
I'm good. Let's go. So I went to see her on like a Wednesday at like 11, and she was like, all right, I'm just gonna, call to see who's on duty and just go right now.
oh wow.
So I was like, okay. And I like got in the car. I called my husband. I was like, we're going. I called my mother-in-law. I was like, go pick up the kids. Hope you didn't have plans. And she was like, oh, I bless. I was like, cancel them. Go to pick up the
This
kids.
one's non-negotiable.
I would say the third one is different.
Mm.
The third one is different. In the other two, I went in like 4 or 5 centimeters dilated, even though I was being induced. I always had contractions before, and it was kind of like both very similar. The third one is different. And when I went in, the nurse kept saying, because I was only 2 centimeters dilated. And I was like, that's not a lot because I was used to going in more. And she was like, it's your third, it's going to be different. It's your third, it's going to be different. And the whole time she kept saying that to me. And she kept saying, you're going to see, you're going to be 2 centimeters and then you're going to be 10. And it's going to happen immediately. And I was like, okay, but now it's been like 4 hours, 5 hours, and I'm still at 2 centimeters. And she was like, it's fine. It's going to be different. And then I remember I had the epidural and I was just kind of like lying on my side, like resting. And I said, ooh, did you turn down the epidural? And she literally, I swear, I'm going to reenact it. She goes, are you feeling something? And I said, yeah, woo, I feel that contraction. She goes, open your legs. I was like, okay. And I was still on my side. I don't need to show everyone this, but I was on my side and I kind of like lifted my leg and she goes, well, we're going to push. And I was like, but I'm 2 centimeters. She goes, I told you it was going to go fast. And all of a sudden there were like 5 doctors in the room. I don't think I've ever seen it where there was that many doctors in the room. And all of them, I suspect, had a hand in.
Mhm.
And then I was literally pushing, but I was still on my side because I hadn't even had an opportunity to like turn
fully
back or
Mhm.
and it was just, and then I ended up pushing for a little bit of time, which is okay. But yeah, it was
Mhm.
like 2 centimeters, chilling, resting, to like, it's coming, the baby's coming, everyone's in the room. It was very funny.
Oh my gosh.
It
Just
was
like
very,
a scene from
very.
The Office.
it
Like,
was-
it's happening,
It
everyone.
was like a scene from The Office.
Yeah.
It was very funny, and she was right. And I
Mhm.
think that it's standard when you have like 3 or more that it's kind of like 0 to something. And I think that's probably why they say like if you're having contractions, it's your 3rd, like you go straight to the hospital because it could happen so fast.
Yes, one of my friends had it with her 3rd, gave birth in the car drive. Like they were going to the hospital and they didn't make it.
Mm.
So just stop on the
That's
side of the road.
awful.
And
I had like I don't know if it was a Kardashian moment. I don't know who it was exactly. I think it was one of the Kardashians. When I gave birth to Maddie, I pushed for like half an hour.
Mhm.
And because I was induced, my OB was there. She was the one who delivered my baby because that's how I wanted it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm going to do it when you're on call. She's like, well, we can do it tomorrow. It's not me, or you can wait till Monday. I'm like, at this point, it's almost 42 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
Mhm.
And I'm pushing, and so like my legs are up, obviously, and she's her head is out,
Yeah.
and her shoulders are out, and my doctor all of a sudden goes, grab her, and I'm like, what? like grab her, like grab her like this, as
Yes.
you would a child, like pull her out of you. And I
I'm
did.
so jealous.
You're jealous.
I am so jealous.
I thought I was gonna decapitate her.
No.
So I
How do
pulled
you
her
think
out of
people
me.
did it?
Pulled her out
I
of-
did. I
That
pulled
is
her out of me and I put her on
amazing.
my chest right away.
Ah, that is amazing.
I pulled her out of me. You know what
Oh
kind of
my-
like a mutant feeling that is? I pull her out of me. I put her on my chest. She's all insidey.
Mhm.
And I start crying.
Of course.
But the first time I didn't. I worked a lot harder the first time.
That's incredible that you did that.
I
I'm
pulled her
so
because
je-
I
that is
pulled
the
her out and I put
coolest
her.
thing.
But in that moment, my doctor, who we joked around all the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
she was great, my OB. I thought she was joking. So I'm like, what? Really? She's like, pull her out. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't, because you can't see. So
No,
I
you
didn't
can't
know if I
see.
was pulling her out from the head and I was
Mhm.
gonna like decapitate her or like what I was pulling exactly, you know? So I just kind of put my hand somewhere
and just pulled her
and
out.
I just pulled her out and
you
put
had
her
been
on
doing
me.
it right
Did you
before I
have the
told
mirror? I had the mirror.
No, are you crazy? You are just someone else. I cannot. I would not want to look down there even if you paid
Why
me.
it was so cool.
Why don't you just watch it on the internet? Anyway, whatever.
Obviously I do watch lots of
No!
birth.
Even after you had your 3, like,
Yes.
Oh my
yes.
God.
For another reason. Yes. yes.
Anyway, so she's on me and I start crying. The emotion is just
But you've just
overwhelming.
done that, yeah.
And Matt is here. Yeah, because I it's like pulling your insides out and putting them on you. It's the weirdest thing. And I'm looking at her and she's this little human that you just pulled out of you. It's the
incredible.
strangest,
This
it's
is
the
why-
incredible feeling.
It's incredible.
And I was so happy that I did it correctly.
Of course.
That's
But she wouldn't
amazing.
have let you pull her by her head.
Well, she could have given me fair warning before, like, listen, we're
but
gonna.
you would have said no.
it's probably something that you can't do with everybody. And like, she
Yes.
has to see the
Yes.
baby
Maybe.
to be like, this is an
Listen,
okay
yeah,
opportunity.
I
in
don't
the
know.
instance that the cordon ombilical, the
Yes,
umbilical cord
yes,
isn't,
I
like,
had
in
that.
But I remember Dom, like you mentioned Dom before, sharing that story that she did the same with her son when she gave birth, and I was like nowhere near having babies at that point because she had babies a lot before I did. And she had pulled out her son and she's like, it was the most beautiful experience. And I'm like, you crazy girl. Like, I am never,
I
that's
think-
disgusting.
I
Like,
think
I was disgusted.
But that's why if your OB had said it before, you would have said no.
Case in point.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did it because I thought it was
love
live
that
or
you
die.
did that.
You know?
I love
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
that.
I think
That's a cool thing.
so
I wish I could have
wonderful.
done that. Yeah.
Right?
And yeah, I
It's
mean, it's just
very
my circumstance
cool.
didn't allow for it. But
Maybe I should have another baby just to do that.
Number 4.
No.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, guys. Thank you
Thank
for sharing your
you.
stories. I really
Happy
appreciate
to.
it. And I hope to see you guys again on another
Definitely.
podcast.
for sure.
You've been listening to We've Probably Been There, a podcast by First Moms Club. Follow First Moms Club on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Watch us on YouTube and Spotify, and listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Join us next week for more stories about this roller coaster we call motherhood. Thank you for listening.